The procedure this evening, quite simple. You have the 4 candidates for the Police and Crime Commissioner, and they've drawn 1 to 4 to see where they sit, and in that order they will give you the first couple of minutes. They're each going to speak at the beginning of the meeting for 2 minutes. And the reason why we've curtailed it to that is because it's your meeting. We've got loads of questions from you, and there'll be more that you need. If you indicate you want to put a question when we get to that moment, just put your hand up and then please do fire the question. In case you don't know who we've got, Rupert Moss-Eckhart, who's the Lib Dem, Dave Budgeon, Labour, Jason Oberwhite, who is the Conservative candidate, and Nick Clark, who is the UKIP. So, they've had the draw. Number 1 is Nick.
I believe I have the most relevant experience of all the candidates for this role. I've served in the RAF for 22 years, have run successful companies, and been an independent member of Cambridgeshire's Police Authority. As the leader of Cambridgeshire County Council, I drove efficiencies across the county whilst protecting frontline services despite significant cuts to funding from this government. I am retired from full-time work and available to give this 100% of my time. I do not believe this role should be combined with being a councillor. It's far too important. I am impatient of unnecessary bureaucracy and expect public services to run efficiently and in the interests of the people they serve. It is time to take the fight to the criminals. The interests of law-abiding citizens and victims must always take precedence over those of the criminals. Those that break the rules must be punished, and those that seek to disrupt our way of life must be taught there are consequences. So if you want a strong, no-nonsense approach to policing and more money spent on frontline services, if you want to see more police officers, reduce speeding and a 101 service that works, if you want a zero-tolerance approach for low-level crime, antisocial behaviour and illegal drug supply, as well as combating rural crime, and if you want somebody with the experience to fight on the national stage for fair funding for our constabulary, then I ask you to vote for me.
Moving on then, let's move to the Conservative candidate, Jason Oberwhite.
Thank you, John. It's great to see so many of you here this evening. As a current council leader of one of the largest district councils in the UK, I'm used to dealing with complex budgets, complex issues, and dealing with some of the most vulnerable people that we have in our society on a daily basis. I've got a long record of service, having served on my council and other councils for 16 years, and I'm proud of my achievements, which are many within my local community. As a council leader, yes, I've had to deal with austerity the same as every other across the country. But one of the things that has always been my byword is getting the front line right, putting the customer, the resident first, and ensuring that frontline services are absolutely protected. As a council leader, I've managed to take 34% out of the budget and still managed to keep every single frontline service alive. And that is hugely important with the police the way it is and the way it should be. I have been appalled to hear some of the residents that have been telling me today about some of the issues they have in some of the areas of Wisbech. And I will make it my duty to ensure that those are dealt with and you have a police service that is serving your needs. Thank you.
And your third candidate, to my right here, Dave Budgeon.
Thank you and good evening, and I'm very pleased to see so many people here. This is my 6th visit to Wisbech, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and then a little bit about my plans. I was a firefighter for 30 years, served on the front line for all of that time, worked in emergency services, so I have a very clear idea about the problems of running an emergency service, which is always in austerity. I then went on to university, did a first degree, and wrote a public service degree. I have a PhD in public service culture now, which I gained as a mature student. I'm currently a Cambridge City Councillor, and on our council, since the Labour Party have been in power, we haven't cut any services. My vision for the future, my vision is about fostering a spirit of cooperation. I will make the police service more efficient, not by cutting the numbers, not by cutting backroom services, but by engaging the police with the community, in attending meetings similar to this. As the Police and Crime Commissioner, taking off my jacket and sitting down with people and listening to what they want. I've been doing that throughout the county. I visited 35 locations within the county. I will bring a senior police officer with me to, say for example, Wisbech. I will bring them here, we will sit down, you will talk to the police officer, you will tell them what's wrong, you will set a priority for that police service, that police officer. It will become my priority. The Commissioner's job is to set the priority for policing. So if you give us a problem and we come up with an answer to that, then I will see that actually comes into being. I'm a can-do sort of guy. I come from a background of being a can-do sort of guy. And I'm the sort of person that you've got to look into my eyes and say, do I trust you, Dave? Do I think that you can do what you're going to say you're going to do? Or are you just making another spiel? Are you just saying the same things? Under the Labour Party, there were 18,000 extra police officers brought into being. Since 2010, we've lost those 18,000 police officers. When people tell me they don't see police officers in Wisbech, then you have to ask why.
And our fourth candidate, whose surname always causes our journalists difficulty, and the golden rule of journalism is to get the name right, doesn't matter what you say after that. So Rupert Moss Eckard is our fourth speaker.
Thank you. I'm going to keep this a little shorter than the others, just to give you a bit more time for questions. I'm Rupert Moss Eckard. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate. Why would you vote for me? Well, I will reduce crime. I know how to. I can make the force an exemplar of best practice, and I can reconnect the force with the community it serves. I grew up in Welney. I have no idea how many times I've been to Wisbech, but it's been lots of times. Tax discs, the whole shamoz. And I worked and lived in Cambridge for some time, and now live in Queen Adelaide. So I'm familiar with bits of the county, across the county. I know where things happen, I know what's going on, I can service the whole area. A while ago, I helped set up an organisation called the National Centre for Policing Excellence. It was a national body established to help develop what they call doctrine, best practice in policing to achieve demonstrable results in reducing crime, improving the way the police worked. I've also gone on to do different things with that now with BT, providing security advice to, amongst other things, law enforcement agencies. So I have experience and knowledge of techniques and ways of working that deliver results for communities. I also drive for openness and transparency. As a county councillor, I forever had to fight against certain leaders of the county council in order to hide things. I've tried to force them out in the open. I will set priorities in public, involving the community and their leaders to make sure that local priorities are what the local people want. And so, in summary, to save a bit more time, I will reduce crime, I will improve the force, and I'll be open and transparent to serve you best.
Okay, we're on to your time now. Okay, let's go to the first question then, and it's been asked by two people, Steve and Kathy. So, Steve or Kathy, would you like to put the question, because it's the identical question?
Can I just ask, what's your opinion of the proposal to amalgamate the police service and the fire service?
The question was the amalgamation possibility of the police and fire service. We'll start with Jason on that one, and then work through the panel.
Thank you. My view is there are many advantages for bringing the two together. I think you have to accept that operationally they're very different, that the police and the fire service do all work in an autonomous way, but actually they work very, very closely together as well. There are many, many opportunities there to push for further efficiencies, which then in turn put more frontline policing, more frontline officers where they need to be. And the best way to do that is to amalgamate the headquarters for a start. You've got a fire headquarters at Hinchinbrook right next door to another building, which is the police headquarters. You get the economies of scale. You get the back office savings through that. That's what local government is doing a lot of the time at the moment. I'm working with South Cambridgeshire District Council at the moment and Cambridge City in terms of shared service, which is of course a Labour council as well, so across party boundaries as well, in order for us to save money. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. I think it's important that we don't muddy the operational, but there are great opportunities. I was at Linton the other day where the police station is closed, but the police have moved into the office of the fire station. Now, it's that sort of collaboration that means that you have that on the ground, most important, heart of the community, policing and fire service that we need.
Thanks very much. Well, you might expect me to say that was a great idea, but I think it's a really bad idea. A really, really bad idea. It sounds to me like empire building. The Police and Crime Commissioner's job is enough on its own. It's a big enough job to do. The police have a reputation to keep. The fire service have a reputation to keep. The fire service have a purely positive reputation. The public see them as their friend. The police are the arm of the state, and we mustn't forget that. And they exert that arm. And to try and muddy the waters and bring the two any closer is extremely difficult. Of course you can share a police station, you can share a fire station. Of course you can do that. Operationally, I know, because I've done it, you cooperate. The police officers and the fire service cooperate. They don't need a political person at the top of them interfering with all that. This is not a good idea. The positive image that the fire service has is because they go out and help people. They have lots to show them, teach the police. They can teach them about community engagement. They can help them to do that a lot better. In fact, I can really do that. I can help the police with the community engagement. But to join the two together, to make a czar in charge of both, that just would not work. It would muddy the waters. It would become involved. People would start to talk about police officers on fire engines, fire officers in police cars. That isn't how our society has been run in the past, and I don't see any advantage for it in the future. Thank you.
Clearly, the current government is pushing on with this. They're putting through Parliament at the moment a duty to collaborate. However, there is an element of choice amongst local communities, amongst your councillors, to work on whether or not that should be full-on merging back to just simply sharing some facilities or even just sharing some practice. One thing that often gets confused, sharing services does not mean co-location. You do not need to be in the same building to share a service. In big business, we do this all the time. You have different parts of the organisation spread around the world. You don't have to have everybody in the same building. Cambridgeshire Fire Service are moving to a new headquarters behind the Marriott in Huntingdon. It is probably too late to change that without wasting an awful lot of money that is ill-affordable. At the same time, as Dave has said, they are different services. They do have blue flashing lights on their vehicles, but that's as similar as it gets. The approach is different. One is very reactive most of the time. These days, the fire service is quite a lot of proactive activity. There's a thing called this integrated risk management plan, where the fire brigade, the fire service, work very hard to make sure fires don't start in the first place. The days when all they did was run into burning buildings, bringing people out, has thankfully gone. They still have to do that on occasion, and we're very grateful they do. But not having the building catch fire, great. Not having people trapped in it, great too. Let's focus on avoiding those sorts of things. So the fire service can teach the police some stuff about reducing harm before it occurs, but it doesn't mean they should work together in an enforced way driven politically. At the same time, Norfolk do some useful things. The integrated risk management team there are used to assess the performance of the police as a fresh pair of eyes.
Are you for or against it, mate? You didn't say either.
It won't be the choice of the PCC, but I'm against the general principle that you force public services together. It just doesn't work when they're so different.
I've got some great concerns about this as well. I've got some great concerns because there's a lot of change being forced upon the local authorities at the moment by central government. On one hand, the Home Office is saying that Cambridgeshire Constabulary needs to collaborate formally with Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire. In the same breath, it's saying it needs to look at devolution in Norfolk and Suffolk. And then superimposed upon all this, there's this bright idea just come out saying that the PCC should assume responsibility, potentially, for the fire service. Now, if amalgamation of any local authority or sharing of services of any local authorities makes sense, then we should support it. At the moment, the fire authority is looked after by, in terms of governance, by the fire authority. A bunch of people appointed from the county council. It has no democratic accountability whatsoever. So I think that needs questioning. The biggest issue we've got when we talk about the force control rooms of the police is that they're being considered to have to be shared with Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire at the moment. And if you were to bring that together with the fire, it's starting to look really disjointed. So my take on this would be, I don't believe legislation will be enacted for at least 12 months. I think we should settle down and deal with some of the bigger issues first of all. This certainly wouldn't be a top priority, and I'd have to be convinced that it made sense for the people of Cambridgeshire, and I'd go out and consult before taking any decisions on this issue.
The question from Colin is, what are the panel's views on insults towards an ethnic minority group by one of the candidates?
Right, yeah, that brings the debate alive a little bit. I'm not going to get into that mudslinging, I'm sorry. What I'll say is this. I've spent my whole life believing in equality. I've spent my whole life trying to support people that are different to me, people that are less fortunate to me, and that's how I've spent my life. I am currently an expert on the employment of minorities and women into emergency services, which are generally seen as all male. I am internationally used to encourage that sort of cooperation, to change a service that just looks like me. I have worked hard to support minority groups. I've worked hard to support people who are disadvantaged. So my answer to you is this. I'm not going to get involved in the muckraking. If somebody wants to use that sort of language, then that's up to them. But you won't find me saying things like that. And I'm sorry for not directly answering the question, but I'm telling you why.
Okay, Rupert, your interpretation on that question.
Yes, one of the key things and one of the roles that's not talked about much for the PCC is the so-called equality duty. It is one of the few things the PCC must do is to ensure that the police service works in a way that is equal, fair, and deals with all sides of the community fairly, effectively. I think it would be hard to fulfil that duty given what's been said recently, quite a while ago now. Similarly, I think it shows an error of judgment that is not recoverable from. I found what I saw on Facebook very shocking. If I'd been an employer, that person would not work for me anymore.
Okay, let's go to Nick.
I'm guessing people might think it came from me, but I can assure you it hasn't. So let's be clear about that. When I was at the county council, I championed the minority groups that just didn't have a voice, and I'm a great believer that if you don't give respect, you can't get it back. So we should treat people equally before the law. We should treat people equally by all local authorities, and those that struggle the most need the greatest help. They certainly don't labelling and pigeonholing, and I have to say that my party has suffered from a lot of this pigeonholing for a long time, largely wrong. Look, I've seen these comments as well, and all I'd say is that they were, at best clumsy and insensitive, but I'm probably going to echo Rupert's words as well.
Okay, the final candidate to answer the question is Jason.
Thank you very much. Of course, this is aimed at me. And when we talk about muckraking and going back over 6 years of Facebook page accounts, it shows how desperate some people are to muckrake. As I've already said previously, I deal with, on a daily basis, some of the most vulnerable people within our society. I deal on a regular basis and look after, in our community of St Ives, a large population of Polish people, a large Bangladeshi community, a large Pakistani community. And that has never stopped us having respect for each other. I think what you have to differentiate sometimes is a bit of pub time humour between friends that isn't full of hate, that isn't meant in that term whatsoever, and actually take the politics out of this and think about what's going on instead.
Okay, anybody else want to comment on that? Yes, sir.
Well, I think these comments, I mean, I picked up on this a couple of days ago, but I was quite concerned that he was a public servant at the time, being paid by the public purse as a councillor. Your Facebook page is out in the public domain, and yet you still made those comments. So your mindset is racist. How can you say it's a bit of banter between friends? I don't joke between my friends and call travellers, pipers, etc. I refer to people, you know, by their correct status in life. So you're a public servant who's being paid by the public purse, and yet you're putting comments on Facebook in the public domain, and you call it a bit of banter. Well, you might be getting my vote.
Okay, Jason.
Thank you very much. Again, you can blow it out of all proportion if you actually like.
It's in black and white, Jake. It's there in black and white.
But frankly,
It's not out of proportion with the travellers you're
It's-
referring to.
at the end of the day, whatever way you want to look at this, and if people have taken offence, then I'm truly sorry that is the case. But fundamentally, if you go into St Ives at the moment, you will see hundreds of boards up for my election. And if you knock on the door of those places, you will see Bangladeshis, you will see Polish people, and you will see the Pakistani community coming out en masse to support me, because they know what I've done for them in their local communities. It is simple as that.
You can put a blue rose out of the monkey people about
Okay, I'll take one question. Debbie at the back, I believe, for those who won't know, is actually Jason's agent, correct?
I would just like to actually correct something there. This was not on Jason's public Facebook. Jason and another person who was involved in the comments. And if you read it, I think you'll realise that it was just light-hearted banter. Jason's and another person's Facebooks were actually private. It came from another member who was involved in the conversation, and it took digging back 6.5 years to find it.
You don't
Now-
need to justify what Jason has said. You were not part of that at the
I'm
time.
not-
You were not there at the time. You cannot justify his personal comments.
I can honestly say that I have pulled the Irish tinkers. Yeah? Because that's what they are commonly known as. It does not mean that I'm racist. My
You're
stepson
not
is
paid by the
Irish.
public
My
purse. You are not
stepson's
paid
Irish.
by the public purse, woman. End of story.
Why are you being so aggressive?
Yeah.
I'm being aggressive because the way that this is being covered up, it's racist.
It's not being covered up.
It's racist.
Okay, can we
Racist.
sorry, can we move on? Councillor Steve Tony.
Thank you. I just want to say how despicable it is, actually, to hear members representing we're here to support the Labour candidate, given what's currently going on in Labour and that horrible anti-Semitic scandal.
Yeah.
It's just
Yes.
someone else.
He's here to justify himself. He's here to ask for our vote in an election. We're entitled to ask for candidates.
Okay, I can't differentiate between people who ask questions. So if you could just go back to your seat, we'll hear from you from your seat.
I'll speak to you.
No, if you go back to the seat, I can't. Everybody else will want to come up and use the microphone, so they'll hear you. You've got the next question, and then we'll wrap it up with some any feedback. So, right, we'll wait and hear what you have to say, sir. Please.
Well, basically, I'm part of the Wisbech discussion forum, and you hear a few times about someone mentioning a black person walking across the road. In the comments, a woman would say, "Why would you need to mention a black person?" Turns out that lady wasn't racist at all, but she did mention black. What I'm trying to get at is, just because you mention certain things over social media does not make you racist.
When you're paid by the public purse, you have to adhere to standards. You have a standards to adhere to.
Okay. Let's move on. Let me just very quick. Sorry, mate, we've got plenty of time. So let me just explain something that happened to me today, which is quite relevant to this. I had a really angry phone call at 5:30 tonight from somebody because our paper today had referred to the fact that the The murder in Wisbech during the week involved an English couple, and he wanted to know why, most angrily, why I'd used the term English in that story when I hadn't ever used it before and don't normally mention a nationality. And he was very heated, gentleman from Wisbech, and I explained to him the reason why we'd used the word English was because when the story broke at the beginning of the week, everybody jumped to the conclusion as to the nationality of the people that were involved. And I mentioned it was English to quell that nonsense, and it did. It doesn't make the tragedy any less sad, it doesn't interfere with the police investigation, but it did tell the community something that they would jump into the conclusions and get involved in Chinese whispers that were unnecessary and wrong, and that's why I did it. Okay. All right, I'll take two more questions on this question from the floor. Right, I'll take you first, sir.
It's more a comment than a question at the moment. I'd just like to say that saying anything of a racist nature, whether it is banter or serious, whether it is in private or public, it's still racist.
Yes.
First of all, I'd just like to remind the chairman, if you don't mind, this isn't actually your forum, and I would rather you didn't join in. And secondly, I would like to remind all the candidates and their agents, if it's necessary, that there is no such thing as private Facebook pages, and public servants particularly need to be particularly careful.
Okay. I'm suitably reprimanded. Bob, your next question.
I agree with you, candidate, that the PCC is a full-time job. Will the other candidates, if elected, resign all other posts and jobs that they do?
Good question. Dave?
Yes.
This might be a very short round compared to the previous one. I've definitely committed. My employers are expecting that if I'm elected, they will use my services. I have no other employment, and I will have no other
Does that
employment.
include your council position?
I have no other positions.
I thought you were on the county council.
Not anymore. Not since I moved.
I've always been a local councillor and worked full-time. I like and love representing my local area, and I will continue to do so, but only as a backbench local councillor. All my other positions have already resigned as the chairman of the Police and Crime Panel, chairman for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, as the East of England chairman of the Local Government Association, and on the national board. I will resign next week anyway, and as leader of the council, it is coming up to the AGM on Friday. Yeah, Friday struck to the election in any case, and I've already made that indication that we're stepping down as well. Yes.
Mike, you had a question.
Yeah, can you explain why the position of Police and Crime Commissioner should be aligned to a national, not necessarily national, to a political party?
Okay, the question, if you didn't have, was why should a Police and Crime Commissioner be aligned to a political party? Let's go to Labour first. Dave Benton.
Thanks. No, it doesn't have to be, but it is. Currently in this arena, we are all members of a political party. I think there's an enormous advantage for people with that, because this position is all but autonomous. When you get appointed commissioner, you get voted by the people, you're elected into office. Now, there is no check and balance. There is a police committee, but that doesn't have hardly any authority over the Police and Crime Commissioner. Government are hard pressed to hold police and crime commissioners to account, but political parties will. So if you know that there is at least somebody who will be ringing me up if become police and crime commissioner and I start to do something that people find a little bit outrageous, then you know that there will be people knocking on my door saying, Dave, you need to be a bit thinking about this. In the same way, one of my checks and balances is going to be my deputy, who I've already said who I'm going to appoint as my deputy. That is out there in the public domain, so when I go into the ballot box, effectively, I take my deputy with me. I've chosen somebody who's an entirely different person to me, different character, different experience, so another check and balance for me. So,
if any of us are elected, when we're elected, one of the first things we have to do before we can start the job is take the oath of impartiality, which requires the PCC to do the job without favouring anyone, people, groups, political parties even. So the role is not political in that respect. However, you'll notice that we all stand here with an emblem of some sort or another next to our name. That actually, as well as what Dave said about making sure that when we are in office, the party at least is leaning on our shoulders and saying, "Oh, that's a bit stupid, stop it at once." More importantly, when you vote for us, you know roughly what you're going to get. If you have somebody who stands up here saying, "Hello, I'm independent," you'll know if they've been working in your community for years, you'll know who they are, what they stand for. But in an election of 600,000, most of the people voting will never have met the candidate on the ballot paper. It's just the way it is. So you have to have some other way of getting an idea of what you're going to get when you vote. So you know roughly from the labels we've been given what you're going to get in the way of approach to certain things, ideology, political beliefs. For me, before I became a Lib Dem candidate, I had to sit an exam for an hour, I had to go through a series of interviews to make sure that A, I could do the job and not cause the party difficulty, and B, that I was able to carry the brand, as it were, the Lib Dem, the bird of liberty. Those things mean that when you do vote for me, if you do, you know, as well as the things you see on my political material during the campaign, what I say here, what I've said elsewhere, you know what other things you can assume will be the truth about me. So that does help.
Nick.
Thank you. I happen to disagree with both the previous speakers. I think this post really should be apolitical, if the truth be known. The problem is that it's the only election that is county-wide, and if you obviously include Peterborough in there, that's a huge geographic area. The barriers of standing are huge. First of all, you've got to put up £5,000, which I had to do myself, but you have to get 100 people to sign your nomination forms. And to be truthful, I don't think I know 100 people that would sign a political document like a nomination form. So you're almost forced into being with a party. Now, I'm not forced to be UKIP, but those that should and could have stood as independents, I think have been dissuaded by the whole way this has been set up. So what I've chosen to do, and we're the only party that doesn't have a whip, so that there's nobody within UKIP, if I'm elected, that can tell me what to do, and those that know me would probably understand that they wouldn't get away with it, and Steve's laughing at the back there. On my website, where I've posted my manifesto and where it's showing, UKIP is mentioned, but it's 99% about me, not about the party. I think that's exactly what this role should be about.
Thank you very much. For me, I've been a proud Conservative for many, many years, and I wear my colours on my sleeve during election time. Anybody that knows me is once the election is over, that's it. You're doing your bit for the residents. And we try wherever we can to keep party politics on the back burner and do our best. And that is the way that I will do this role if elected. As I've already said, I work cross-party. I have a great working relationship with Lewis Herbert, who's the Labour leader of Cambridgeshire City, because it's the right thing to do, and we've had this discussion, it's the right thing to do what we're doing for our residents first and foremost. So it's cutting away those political barriers once you're elected. In terms of why it's political, it's because it's the way it's set up, frankly, and at this election there are no independent candidates. You know, we all stand on a party ticket, but frankly, you know, this is about residents first and our local communities. Thank you.
Well, I suppose Nick, if you wanted 100 people quickly, you set up a Facebook page. So, absolutely. This gentleman in the back, you indicated earlier you'd like to ask a question.
My question is quite simply this. Speaking as a resident of Wisbech, and being one who was on the front line at one time, because I've been there, done it, and got a t-shirt if you want, what assurances can you give us as residents of Wisbech that you're going to put more bobbies on the beat, that we can see, and not just hear that Nina, 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 but watch officers walking around our town day and night, instead of having to transfer to March or to Kingsley, because at the moment it's a disgrace. I have not seen a police officer I have not
seen a police officer walking the beat in Wisbech for as long as I can remember.
Or the rest of the county for that matter.
Well, and the only ones I've seen are PCSOs. What the hell is happening to our once proud police force? And anybody up there on that top table who can assure me and everybody else in this room that they will change it, then I will seriously give you consideration. But up until now, gentlemen, you've told me nothing to convince me. Thank you.
Okay, Rupert, your turn to start.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disappoint you. I will not lie to you. I will not be putting a priority increase in bobbies on the beat. What I'll be doing instead is working to reduce crime, working to reduce the number of people who are victims of crime, reducing the harm. One of the challenges we have in policing historically, that some of it was a bit of a craft. You learned from your puppy training, and the problem was that if you just put bobbies on the beat, where this has been done, in New York, in parts of the UK too, I won't describe in detail, it does give a degree of reassurance temporarily, but does not reduce crime. The way to make you feel safer is to reduce the crime. It is to make sure you have an opportunity to connect with the police. So you know, if you do make contact with them by phone or in person, or even by letter, you know you'll get your query dealt with effectively, efficiently, and in a way that helps. Just having something in a high-vis jacket that says Chief Police on the back, an so-called omnicompetent officer, does not help in the modern age where we have so many in the population. And I will not lie to you and say I'm going to buy your vote by giving you more bobbies on the beat, because that would be a lie.
Remind people that when I was the leader of the county council, for the first time ever, because I recognised that Wisbech was struggling to be recognised in the county, I brought the cabinet here for its very first time outside of Shire Hall and repeated that process, and also did it to St Neots. That was a symbol to you as people that we cared. I was instrumental in starting the Wisbech 2020 vision. I'm not sure where that's gone now, but I was certainly there at the top table to deliver on that one. And I gave assurances to, as it was the Conservative group at the time, that I would stick up for and look after the north of the county, because there was a suspicion that only the south gets looked after. So I have a record in doing that. To deal with your direct question though, okay, we work within the budgets we've got. Unless we have a strong national voice to challenge those budgets, I have a history of doing that, and I will do it again. I want to set up zero tolerance teams. These will consist of teams of police officers and hopefully with council officers as well, and they'll descend upon communities on a random basis, sweeping up all the low-level crime, the antisocial behaviour, the drinking in public, the speeding, the parking on pavements, all the stuff that frustrates all of us. And that will achieve two things. One, it will give you reassurance for the first time in a long time that police are in your community in sufficient numbers to be seen and you can go and talk to them. But secondly, it sends a message, a strong message to those that break the rules that you can get caught. Because you're quite right, sir, at the moment, people could speed through Wisbech as often as they wanted to, and the chances of getting caught are almost zero. And that's a direct result of the 8% reduction in police officers since 2010. So please, don't anyone leave this room thinking that the Conservative Party is here to support law and order, because it has taken a massive axe to police budgets. The promise by the Chancellor to protect budgets to the end of this Parliament isn't a real saving at all, real protection at all, and only came about because of the terrible atrocities on the continent. So we need to start fighting on the national stage for more funding. Instantly, I will take an axe to my own office, the Police and Crime Commissioner's office. When I was an independent member on the Police Authority, there were 6 staff, and it was costing about £350,000 a year for the insurances and so on. That's risen to 17 staff and £650,000 of cost under the Conservatives. Now, that money can be taken out of the pot straight away and put into the 101 service, which is what we have got, which doesn't work at the moment to get in contact, and it can also fund police officers, and that would be within my gift.
And to wrap up that question, and Jason.
Thank you very much. I think what you want to hear this evening is not lip service, you want action. You want fundamentally somebody to stick up for you because people in Wisbech feel they're out on a limb. And they feel that the county council don't care, they feel that local councils don't care. It's not always the case, because I know there's a lot of good stuff that goes on, but there's a real perception. I've heard some shocking things, talking to residents in here this evening, about some of the police response times, what they're not doing, why are they sitting in cars, why are they not getting out into the local community, and quite frankly, that needs to be addressed. One of the key roles of the Police and Crime Commissioner is to hold the Chief Constable to account. And if we have got rogue or we've got inefficient sector commanders, then that needs to be dealt with, they need to be rooted out, and we need somebody in there that's going to deliver for our local population. Thank you.
And David.
Thank you for that question. We're here tonight because I spoke to the people in Wisbech on 5 occasions, and everybody said to me, we do not see police officers, we do not get to see the politicians involved. So I said to some colleagues of mine in Wisbech, let's organise this thing, I'll pay for it, and I hope that the other people may contribute, maybe they won't. It's coming out of my pocket. So we're here tonight because I set this up, because this is part of the core of what I want to do as a police officer. Please.
Before you say what, you may be breaking the law, because that can be seen as an inducement. Okay, you're not allowed to do that. That's against the law.
Okay, I'm not allowed to do it. Right.
You have. You have.
Okay, I have. Year on year, the police service have been cut since 2010. Okay, year on year. I'm against that. Year on year, the PCC, in charge of this service in this county, has cut the police service. And when the question came up earlier about political allegiances, clearly that PCC was a Tory. I can't accept that another Tory is going to be any different. The party will line up alongside their party. That's what it's like to be in that party. What did my party do? My party's made a pledge. My party's made a pledge, more bobbies on the beat. My party brought in more bobbies on the beat. I am making that pledge. I have made a pledge that, to start with, from the first day I'm in office, I will set up a bobby on the beat in Peterborough, in Huntingdon, and in Cambridge, and that money will be found to put that bobby on the beat, the sole job they will do. Now, hang on. That will be the start. Now, I am aware of what's happening in Wisbech. I'm aware of what people have said, and don't believe that you won't be at the top of my list. I will be down here to listen to what you are saying again and to bring the police with me. Now, you can shake your head.
You just gave us your list and we weren't on the top.
No, I didn't.
We were four.
I said we'll start.
Speak, please.
Yeah. We're starting. Well, you won't be last. That will be the start of my list. Okay.
You said Peterborough, Huntington, and Cambridge. None of those offended, so we are obviously not on the top of your list.
No, I said, no, listen, after that, you will be at the top of my list, just once.
After the first 3.
Okay, what? Just explain to me, I mean, I'm getting pinned down here, and it's easy to laugh at me, but just explain to me what anybody else has done for you. You've told me about what hasn't been done, I'm telling you what I'm going to do. And that's where it ends.
Okay, what I'm going to do then is ask each of the candidates to give us their 3 top priorities, and then finally, just to conclude it on the police panel, would you bring them back? Nick?
I think I'll take the easy one first. Yes, I will bring them back, neighbourhood panels, but more importantly, I think the policing at the moment is cloaked far too much. So I want to also bring in that all papers should be published on the internet by default, unless there's a jolly good reason why they're not. That all meetings should be held in public, and questions should be made much easier for people to ask questions, unless there's a jolly good reason why not. And I'd like to strengthen the police and crime panel that does exist from elected councillors to give them some real teeth, even if they're not in statute, that doesn't matter. That I can be called in front of them, interrogated along with the chief constable, which they won't do at the moment. And you know, I'm going to point this out, but Jason did chair the police and crime panel, and it's his panel that's allowed Sir Graham Bright to get away with everything he's done at the moment. And I'm going to tell you, I think that is a classic case of nepotism within the Conservative Party, and I speak as an ex-Conservative. In terms of dealing with the low-level crime and the things that irritate all of our communities across the county, that's the idea behind my zero-tolerance teams. They can arrive unannounced and they can deal with it. So, sir, when you can see people urinating when they shouldn't be urinating, you know, they'll have to do it a number of times, I guess, but one day that zero-tolerance team will turn up and they will be arrested and they will all be taken down and it will be dealt with very seriously. Along with the parking on the pavements, which get in the way of people with eye problems like I've got at the moment, and all the rest of it. You know, these things are not being dealt with at the moment because the Chief Constable has less resources and he's focused on the very serious crimes. But what we have to start doing is looking at harm, and a little bit of harm to all our communities across the county adds up to a lot of harm, and it's got to be dealt with. And the final one, the three key issues, we've got to deal with the response times on the 101 service so that people, particularly in rural areas, can get through. Rural crime is completely unreported at the moment, and the people in the rural communities are feeling very, very isolated. The second thing is much higher visibility policing. So zero-tolerance teams help on that. I've told you where I'm going to make some savings from my own office in respect of getting more funding, and that's got to go in high-vis policing. And that means, even with the PCSOs, they've got to go back to how they used to be. I don't mind them being in cars going between communities, then they get out and walk around for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever it takes, not driving around hoping they're going to get caught for something else. And the third one, I'm afraid, it's drugs. I have a passion about drug supply. I want a zero-tolerance approach to it. I want to go back 2 chief constables ago to Julie Spencer's day when she had a door-a-day policy. Every day of the year, a drug dealer somewhere in this county was made really miserable when their front door was broken in by the police, in the same way that drug dealers make our lives a misery. Jason.
Thank you very much. Just in response to the comments that were made about the police and crime panel, of course it is cross-party, so please go back to your UKIP member that was on there that was clearly not doing his job either. I chair it and allow everyone to speak, and anybody that sees me chair a meeting allows everyone to do it, in terms of me allowing people to do what they need to do on those panels, so let's not have that. In terms of Wisbech, I think one of the key things we need to tackle is violent crime. I've heard a lot of people in my visits over here talking about violence towards youngsters especially, and that has to be a key priority. But a lot of that does come back to drugs as the core issue that needs to be fundamentally dealt with so incredibly harshly. It's not just violent crime, it's the things that lead out of that. It's the burglaries, it's the petty thefts, it's the old lady walking down the street who gets a bag snatched when she goes to the cash machine, who's followed round the corner. It's that sort of thing that we have to have an absolute zero tolerance of. The only way we can do that is by reducing central costs, back office costs that we go back to ensure that more money can be ploughed on the front line. I've not heard anybody along here that's actually said how they're going to do that. I've heard a lot of rhetoric about it, but I haven't heard anything else. So the key priorities have got to be that. The other thing we have to do, and it's lucky that the legislation is changing, you have a DPO in place. And one of the things that I hear coming over here is the street drinkers, people drinking in the park, is a huge issue for a lot of people around here. Under the current legislation, you can't just go and take the can away from them. They have to be causing a nuisance with it. The legislation is being changed at the moment so that alcohol can be taken off of individuals. So I think in terms of Wisbech, there has to be some core priorities that are actually attached to the local area, not just generic to the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, where some of the issues are very different indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. My three priorities are all the same priority. I'm going to foster a spirit of cooperation. And I said that at the beginning of my stand. It's been my core principle all the way through. I can promise you lots of things, but the things I promise you here, I might not want to promise in other places. What I'm going to do, if elected PCC, is to bring senior police officers into this community in a very similar situation to this. The community and the police officers will talk, priorities will be set, they will become my priorities, and those priorities then in turn become the Commissioner's, the Chief Constable's priorities, to police in that manner. That is what I will do. That is what I've been saying since day one. Not tonight, I haven't made it up this week, it's been on my website and in my proper papers from the beginning. Regarding the police panels, I think that they need toughening up. I think they need to be more of a cooperative group within the Commissioner's job. So I will be tasking the panel, asking them to give me ideas. They will still maintain their scrutiny position, but I will be involving those panels because they are representative of the community. They are a link down. They are councillors and some lay people from the community, okay? That's what I'm promising. Thank you.
Yes, easy question first. Yes, reconstituting neighbourhood panels where the neighbourhood wants them. In Cambridge there are things called area committees which meet and do priority setting for the local police service there, and that works really well. The police turn up in numbers, to the area sergeant at least, occasionally the sector inspector, and the councillors discuss the priorities. Members of the public say what they feel about possible priorities. They come to a decision and they then become the priorities for that neighbourhood policing team, and that works really well. In some places, parish councils express an opinion. If that's what floats their boat in a parish, that's what we do. If there is enthusiasm for a neighbourhood panel, we will set it up. I will come along, make sure it works, and then we'll take their view as the way to drive the priority for their neighbourhood. That is the only way to be sure that the local police service delivers what the local people want. That leads to one of my other priorities, which is making sure that the police go back to first principles. When Sir Robert Peel set up the first police service, the Met, in the early 19th century, it was all about people doing what the public would normally do, but full time. That was the underpinning thing of a police officer, that they would become just a member of the public, but doing something all the time that we all wanted to have done. Policing by consent is used as a shorthand for that, but that's been lost. We need to get that back, so that the police service in Cambridge and Peterborough is serving the community and doing it in the way that the community wants. And some of that is walking about. Management by walking about is talked about a lot. You cannot represent a community or serve a community without being in that community. I found out as a councillor. The only way I could be a councillor in Arbury was to walk around, work and live in the community. So when I moved house, I stepped down because I did not feel I could be a councillor if I wasn't in the community a lot of the time. I don't see other people can do it. Maybe they're better at it than I just don't know. And all that leads to the police and the community working together to reduce crime. Reduce crime, reduce harm. I've been in places, in particular Newcastle, where the petty crime was left unfought. And those areas are dead now. There are rows and rows of lovely Victorian terraced flats, Tyneside flats, that are just completely empty because when a bit of arson, petty theft, just lawlessness at the really low level was left unchecked, people moved out if they could, the people stuck behind suffered, and then they left too. You need to protect the community at all levels.
Okay. Ben, you asked a question earlier. You wanted a question.
Thank you. I'm Chair of Fenland TV District Council, and my question is quite related to the point made by the gentleman. And I read a report yesterday, which was published a couple of years ago, but it said that there was, and I quote, a profound lack of trust between young people and the police. And it also said that there was, and I quote again, a poor and unconstructive communication. So I'd like to know how you would try to ensure that young people
Right, I'm going to put this round to the panel. The stopwatches are on, gentlemen. 1 minute each, please, starting from you, Jason.
Thank you very much. I think one of those poignant points made this evening was about prevention, because we know that prevention is better than cure. And one of the easiest ways to prevent crime is to absolutely engage with other stakeholders. That is what I have a great history of doing. Cross-party engagement, bringing partners together for delivery. Where you have pockets of deprivation, as we know, in Wisbech especially, that needs to be tackled, because those social issues go on to become major issues further down the road. Statistically, it's an absolute fact that you are more likely, in fact 3 times more likely, if you live in an area such, of deprivation, to be more involved 3 times more in crime.
And be a victim of crime.
And to be a victim of crime. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And the only way you can do that is to engage, to make sure that local stakeholders, councils, the third sector are engaged with this, and indeed the youth. Because these are our people of the future. These are the people that fear the police, because they are not feeling engaged. And I think that is hugely important as well. And one of the things, and one of the key things that the Police Commissioner should be here to do, and I will do, is engage with all stakeholders, engage with the youth, and engage with the population.
Okay, we'll cut them off in this prime, but over 10 minutes. Dave.
I mean, we're back to my same platform. I know it might sound like that, but I'm saying to people that I will engage with the community, that I will bring police officers to the community, and it will be dealt with in that fashion. I can't offer you anything different to that. I'm not making promises of things that I can't promise from this position. You know, the Police and Crime Commissioner is responsible for setting strategy, is responsible for setting the budget, is responsible for seeing that the Chief Constable does the work that a lot of you people are talking about. And a lot of the things you're talking about here are operational policing, which is not the Police and Crime Commissioner's actual job. Now, I am saying I will come to Wisbech, I will bring police officers with me. We will discuss things, we will set priorities, we will meet with young people, we will meet with old people, we will meet with all the people. And I can't offer anything, I'm not going to change my strategy on the hoof in this room. What I'm saying is that we will talk to people and that we will set priorities from that. That is what we do in Cambridge City. Cambridge City, where I am a councillor, set priorities for policing. It actually happens, it actually works.
Okay, Ruben.
Yes, prevention is better than cure. The way to reduce crime is to reduce reoffending. So, if there's somebody committing their first offence, you make sure they don't commit a second. If there are prolific offenders, you make sure when they come out of prison, you go up close behind them, make sure they aren't in a position to reoffend. If they wish to change, you make it possible for them to do so. These things reduce crime. It is the way to reduce harm to individuals. Where funding is necessary, I will again not lie to you. Within the allowance of increasing the council tax, if there's a good reason so to do, I shall do so, because it'll still be cheaper to you than increased insurance premiums, and certainly cheaper than suffering the burglary or something worse. It is worthwhile investing in the police service to get the police service you deserve.
Okay, and Nick, 1 minute on young people and engagement with the police.
Thanks, John. It's a big subject, actually, this. I engage on Twitter, on a blog, and on Facebook, and I've had some really good questions in from not just young people, but across the age range, asking really probing questions. I've had to stop and think, as opposed to just giving a quick answer. We need to do a lot more of that. If we want to talk to communities, we've got to do what is relevant to those communities. Sometimes it's rooms like this, sometimes it's literature, and sometimes it's on new media. But I think the trust for young people has come about because they now do not believe, there's a whole generation that do not believe that when a crime is committed and they try and contact the police, that anything will be done about it. You know, when the Chief Constable says, yes, people answer the 101 service for the first answer, the pickup, but but then you have to wait 35 minutes before any action takes place. You know, I can't remember as a young person being patient enough to wait 5 minutes, let alone 35 minutes. I think we've got to support communities to help themselves. So we've got Road Watch, Neighbourhood Watch, Speed Watch, and we talked about special constables. That is a very small amount of funding required for the Police and Crime Commissioner to really bolster and build this up, because if communities can help themselves, it saves the public purse, and it's far more effective because you know what is going on. But what I am going to take away from this is a thought at the back of my mind. When we started the Wisbech 2020 vision work at the County Council here, I don't think we fully thought through about policing, actually. I know we had some work there, but I don't think we thought that through, and that's definitely on my to-do list.
You had an extra 10 seconds, but Rupert surprisingly finished 10 seconds early. John Smithy, who I met for the first time tonight, a question that John sent to me and arrived tonight as well to give. Drug dealers blight our community. Residents know where these people live, yet the police can do very little about them. Do the candidates therefore support the legalisation of cannabis as a way of putting most drug dealers in Fenland out of business? A yes or a no?
No. It has to be yes and no, in that legalisation on its own will not work. You have to regulate it too, so you make sure that you tax it, you make sure it's managed, you make sure that if someone has difficulty, it's dealt with. More importantly, you make sure that the harmful variants are not sold. So you have to regulate it as well as legalise it. You can't just do one, you have to do both.
I like a man whose sense of humour is an acquired taste. Jason, no disrespect.
Thank you very much. The answer for me is absolutely not. We all know that soft drugs lead to hard drugs. Hard drugs cause all sorts of problems for individuals and their vulnerability and local communities. So the answer is a categoric no.
Okay.
Thanks, I've probably made my position very clear about the door-a-day policy on drugs, but I wouldn't legalise it. I think it sends absolutely the wrong message to our young people. When I joined the RAF in 1977, I was made it quite clear to me by a warrant officer, if you get caught with drugs, you're out the RAF, lad. And that scared the life out of me. And being a little bit scared of being caught sometimes doesn't do us any harm.
Okay. Any last points? Can I ask a quick question of the audience if you feel that you wish to answer this one? Does anybody feel that they can give any of the candidates any hope tonight by having been persuaded to change their mind? I'm not asking you what you vote for. Has anybody, one or two people have changed their mind? Have you changed your mind of before you arrived tonight now as to who you might vote for next week? I'm only just trying to give them some hope to drive home with. Okay. Right, we're about to conclude the meeting, and I've lied to the candidates because I promised them 2 minutes at the end, but I think they've probably done enough to tantalise your election taste buds, so we're going to restrict it to 1 minute summing up, and hopefully then that will be it. So I can't remember which the order will go in, but it was the reverse of where we started, so we started at that end with you. So we'll start with you, Rupert. You have 1 minute beginning now.
If you want to reduce harm, if you want to reduce crime, rather than just increasing arrests or having doors kicked in or other nonsense, no-nonsense policies, please vote for me.
I'm a lifelong public servant. I've served the public all of my life. I've been involved in emergency work for most of my life, and I'm saying I will consult with the communities, I will listen to what the communities are saying, and if you don't want that, then don't vote for me.
Thank you. From my point of view, one of the key things is making sure that we acknowledge communities such as yours. That is the most important thing of all. It's no good you feeling out on a limb anymore. It's no good you feeling unloved. It's no good you feeling that the police don't care. If I'm elected, I will ensure that I get out here. I will go to every corner of the county on a regular basis. one of the keys to being a good police and crime commissioner is communication. And I know that that has been lacking, and I will be the first to admit that with our current commissioner. But from my point of view, it is a key part of the job. And for someone that grew up in a rural area, I will ensure fundamentally that your voice is heard and that your priorities will be my priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want somebody who is experienced and tough on crime with a no-nonsense approach, that's me. And I have a track record of doing that in a number of walks of life. If you want the Chief Constable to have somebody he can have a critical dialogue with and have his priorities refocused onto neighbourhood policing and what's important to people, then you should vote for me. If you want somebody who's competent and experienced at operating nationally with ministers to get fair funding for our schools, for example, then you should be voting for me. And I already have what most of these guys are promising, and that is a track record of working across this county in all our communities with our social work teams, with our highways, with our children's services, and all the forums when I was the leader of the county council. So I have the experience and I have the energy. Thank you.
And that indeed does wrap up this evening's meeting. I do apologise, I should have told you earlier the emergency exits are there in there. But feel free to make a note for future reference. Thank you and good night.